Hello and welcome to the second election podcast. I'm Annabelle Dixon and I'm joined by Dan Grimmer, our political expert, and David Powles, our investigations editor. We thought it was a good chance to do an update on how the campaign's going so far with only a few weeks to go. Dan, first point, how nasty has this campaign got?
Well, if you read the Daily Mail today, they've certainly been a bit nasty to Labour's Ed Miliband. They've got a story which reveals that, shock horror, he has had some girlfriends in the past, and the Mail seems to be suggesting that this is going to turn the nation's women against him. In terms of the Conservatives, they've also been a bit nasty. Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary, brought up the issue of Miliband stabbing his brother in the back and said he would do exactly the same to the country, and then spoke of a grubby little deal that he's doing with the SNP. I think it's pretty clear that the Conservatives, they're being mean to him. I think they know he's a threat. The polls may have surprised them that he's doing better than I think they thought he would, and they're being negative, and they've told their candidates, attack him when you can. So in places where UKIP are quite strong and could take votes from the Conservatives, they're saying a vote for UKIP is a vote for Miliband. Places like, potentially Norwich, they'll be saying vote Green, get Miliband. They're very much taking a negative view here, and whether that will turn the voters off, there's signs that it might be if you believe those polls, but it's a bit of a gamble by the Conservatives. They should perhaps be focusing on saying what David Cameron can do for them, do for the country, rather than, exposing the risk of Miliband.
Yeah. And the irony of the Daily Mail today is actually, I think that that might work for Miliband, because one of the big things he's accused of being is not particularly man of the people, and this just makes him look like a normal guy, and that's probably something that the Conservative Party don't want him to look like. So that's ironic, but you just think that most people must surely see through it, Dan. I just find it just dull, and a lot of people will accuse the parties of having no real manifestos to push, so all they try and do is slate each other's.
Well, we're still waiting. That's the irony. In terms of the manifestos, we're still waiting.
Maybe they just won't bother.
We get well.
Well, I'm told, I think Labour's is coming next week, from what I understand.
The Conservatives as
well.
Yeah.
But there are rumours that the Conservatives are having a few troubles putting the finishing touches to their manifesto. I suppose it's been such a long campaign that in many ways they've had to sustain it by announcing a lot of things already.
It comes in dribs and drabs, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in tight fiscal times, they don't have a lot of money to throw around for giveaways. They try, but if they start promising all sorts of things, inevitably we're going to ask, how are you going to pay for this? And their opponents, I suspect that they don't want to give us too much time to have a look through their manifesto and pick out the holes in it. But Dave, you've obviously been doing you've done your survey, tested the temperature of many of our readers. And how much do you think they want to hear about issues? Do you think they're getting enough in terms of issues?
Well, we had some interesting results first on the survey. We used EDP and Evening News websites, and around 500 people took part. We asked them about 10 questions. Deliberately didn't ask them who they'd vote for, because we thought that's the sort of thing that could easily get hijacked. A couple of the headlines that really emerged was the high proportion of people who still say their vote is up for grabs. So around about 20% say that they're still undecided, and in the next few weeks they'll decide. And that was quite interesting. About 40% of people said that they expect to vote differently to 2010, which also is very, very interesting. And there are obviously a few seats in Norfolk in particular. 2 in particular in Norwich, where if you look at the latest polls, it really is up for grabs, and those undecided voters, the floating voters, could be really key. Some of the key issues that came out at the end: health, education, immigration. They were the 3 big ones that people said that they'd like the incoming party to look at as a priority. So I guess no surprises there. Immigration, we knew was going to be a big one. The percentage is perhaps not as high as I might have expected on that. Around about 20-25% said that was their key issue. And health is obviously always an important issue, and I think that's what Labour have based a lot of policies around, or certainly priorities.
Absolutely. And Dan, on a local level, if you drive through Norwich, you see hundreds of signs down, particularly Earlham Road. There seems to be a sort of green Labour, how many signs can we put up competition going on.
I've been surprised, to be honest. In previous elections, there's always signs, but there are so many this time. I think Clive Lewis's election budget must have quite a lot of that seems to have gone on signs, I think.
Well, someone somewhere, you wonder if there's been a survey or a test done that shows it works.
It's strange, isn't it? Because do people think, oh, my neighbour's voting Labour, I better as well? I mean, it's quite funny. On the way to work, I noticed there was one had voting Clive Lewis. The very next door one had win with right. So I just wonder if those neighbours kind of scowl at each other over the fence. Or, I don't like his policies on this. No, Simon's better. But I don't know. I don't know if does it work. Do people are they swayed by the fact that their neighbours are voting for someone? I've never known.
I think that's part of it, Dan. But I think another part of it is just, this is an election where image is everything really, and I think that probably the political parties think that it's all about having a presence, and if you walk around Norwich and you see 50 Labour signs compared to 10 Conservative signs, it might make the difference. It might be enough to put in your mind, hang on a sec, that party, that politician or wannabe politician is more important, is bigger, has kind of got a bigger budget, so I'll potentially vote for him.
So what do we think about, I suppose we could call them fringe parties, although they'd probably dispute that now, the Greens and UKIP? Clearly in our part of the world, on both sides, we're seen as a sort of key battleground for them. You've got UKIP in Great Yarmouth, and you've got the Greens in Norwich, both seeing as those as really key targets for them. The Chris Hanratty poll is suggesting that neither of those are going to make the breakthrough that they need. Clearly we're in a first past the post system, so second is nothing really. But Dan, do you think that the polls are reflecting what's happening on the ground?
Well, the thing is with the Greens, at the city council level, they're strong. Each year they get better, and they're good councillors. People like their Green councillors, but they never quite make the breakthrough in Norwich South that you always think they're going to make. They'll say, yeah, our vote percentage goes up. But realistically, they came fourth last time round. I know it was different, but this time round, if they're second, that will be a huge success for them. I can't see them winning Norwich South. I might be wrong, but I just think the breakthrough that they anticipate isn't quite going to come yet.
I think a lot of people do see potentially, they might be kind of on the verges of voting for someone like the Green Party, but possibly at the end of the day they think, well, if I vote for them, I'm not really voting, it won't make a big difference, they're not realistically going to get a seat or going to have that much power, so they go for one of the big parties in the end.
But if we're talking about coalitions, I do think this election's actually a game changer in terms of we've just had a coalition. So 5 years ago that might have been the view, that the Lib Dem was seen as a wasted vote, wasn't it?
You can have a small number of seats and still be very important, can't you?
These smaller parties could be the king, the queen makers. When it comes to Westminster, sort of alliances. So I think the Greens have a strong argument in that sense, and indeed UKIP.
Well, you just have to look at the county council in Norfolk for a demonstration
Absolutely.
of what we could expect at the national level, because we've got this sort of so-called rainbow alliance where you've got Labour, you've got UKIP, you've got the Lib Dems, you've got the Greens. We're never really sure exactly whether the Greens are or aren't part of that rainbow alliance. They like to say they're not. The Conservatives like to say they are. But yeah, you're exactly right. That has, a marriage of convenience has had to be forged, and exactly the same thing could end up having to happen at national level.
And what could Westminster learn from Norfolk County Council about coalition?
A rainbow government.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds lovely.
It sounds lovely. It makes things very difficult in practice, I think.
I think that's the fear, isn't it? It takes away clarity of thought. It takes away leadership and direction. You fear that we might just sort of sit and go nowhere for a long period of time.
Yeah. So to conclude, let's share our favourite. Have we got a favourite moment of the campaign so far, locally or nationally?
Oh, blimey,
It's a
good question.
It's a good question. I mean, this is the social media campaign, isn't it? And I do enjoy Twitter during the big moments. Perhaps too much, and you sit there and you should be taking in the various debates and listening to news, and instead you're not listening to it and you're following it on Twitter. But there has been some social media gold, so I think that's my favourite, my highlight so far.
I quite enjoyed the heckler at the during the leadership debate. She was quite.
And no one's seen her since.
She was quite good value. Oh no, they
They
spoke to her
have,
after.
have they?
Yeah,
I
not
feared because there was a big thud as she was presumably led out, and I wondered what happened.
No, she
to
said
her.
they were actually very nice to her as they ejected her, but she said she wasn't going to vote for any of them, which I thought, all right, great. Well engaged with politics there.
I quite enjoyed talking with social media. The poor young guy who asked the first question, who was mocked up as
Johnny
being on
Tudor.
who was mocked up as being on his first date, and it went round. I thought we were going to Nando's. Was the think bubble next to his the girl that he was sitting next to?
With a name like Johnny
chuckle.
Tudor, he needs to be in an indie band, no question. He should be the lead singer of an indie band, and if he doesn't pursue that goal, then he's wasted his life, basically.
Only we could turn the election debate down into a discussion about indie bands. I think that's a good time to end it.
And of course, there's lots of fun things going on locally, and Norman Elson is there
Watching everyone.
watching every move. So you should check out your EDP every Wednesday and the election bit of our website to find out all the gossip from the ground. So it's good note to finish on. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dan.
All right.